My daughter-in-law laughed when I walked into the wedding alone, but a stranger walked in. They froze. I am Vivian Lancaster. It's been a long time since that name meant anything, just a fading headline in some old paper now. These days, I live quietly on the outskirts of Charleston, surrounded by lavender and sunlit mornings. My son Jonathan is gentle, so gentle it often feels like weakness. Rebecca, my daughter-in-law, is sharp, ambitious, and firmly believes the past belongs behind us. Only Grace, my granddaughter, is the one light still tethering me to this world. I chose silence for years, until the day I received Grace's wedding invitation. A small card, but enough to remind me, some things, no matter how far back they go, don't stay buried forever. If you've ever suffered in silence, if you've ever given everything to someone only to be quietly forgotten, then maybe, just maybe, you'll understand me. Stay with me. Listen to this story, and perhaps in my quiet voice, you'll hear echoes of your own. Some invitations aren't written in ink, they're written in memory. And when Grace sent me that wedding card, I knew I had to go quietly, just like the way I had lived, and the way I had been quietly forgotten all my life. I sat in my little kitchen, the card resting on a wooden table worn smooth by time. Morning sunlight filtered through the window, falling gently on Grace's delicate handwriting. She still wrote carefully, just like I taught her when she was a little girl. Outside, the lavender garden was in full bloom. I brewed myself a pot of English breakfast tea the same way I've done for decades. The white porcelain teapot had a fine crack near the spout, but I couldn't bear to throw it away. It's one of the few things left from the days when this house still echoed with laughter. I picked up the New York Times. My eyes skimmed over market updates and rising companies. Sterling Ventures Group, that name no longer made headlines like it once did. I folded the paper and set it aside. The glory days, now just a quiet ember. I once led Sterling Ventures Group. Back then, people on Wall Street spoke the name with discreet respect. I built it from the ground up, brick by brick. But when Jonathan grew older, when I saw the cracks forming in our family, I stepped away. Not because I failed, but because I understood sometimes a mother has to choose between an empire and the children she once cradled in her arms. The phone rang. Its tone was plain familiar. I answered. "Hi, Mom," Jonathan's voice, always a little too soft, as if he were afraid of taking up space, even in his own home. "Just wanted to remind you about Grace's wedding. Everything's almost ready." I let him speak while my eyes wandered to the garden. The lavender was blooming boldly, its scent sweet and steady in the light. Tiny flowers, blooming in clusters, patient the way I've always been. "And please don't dress up too much," Jonathan finished awkwardly. Then another voice chimed in, clearer, colder. "Just wear something simple," Mother Lancaster said. Rebecca. She always spoke properly, even when being cruel. "It's Grace's day. We don't want anyone drawing attention away from her." I paused before replying, my voice calm. "Of course. I remember." I knew exactly what she meant. Rebecca, with her tailored suits, her meetings, her new cars, and cocktail parties I was never invited to. She saw me as a shadow trailing behind her perfect family, a relic better left unspoken. The call ended without a goodbye. I set the phone down and took a deep breath. The scent of tea mingled with lavender drifting in from the porch. Moments later, a soft vibration. A message from Rebecca. "Please remember, this is Grace's day. Don't draw attention to yourself." No exclamation mark, no warmth, just an order, cold and clinical. I didn't respond. I stared at the glowing screen for a long while, then let it fade. I poured more tea, my fingers tracing the cracked rim of the old pot. Outside, the sun had climbed higher. Its golden light spilled across the weathered white porch like warm honey. I slid open the glass door and stepped outside. The porch creaked beneath my feet. I sat down on the faded wooden chair and looked out at my little garden. The lavender swayed gently in the breeze. In the corner sat a small English tea table. On it, a worn, leather-bound book and a glass of mint lemonade, still cool to the touch. Once, I stood on grand stages, accepting prestigious awards under bright lights. I dined with powerful people, shook hands with men who never believed a woman like me belonged anywhere but in the background. But no one ever knew it was mornings like this I longed for the most: quiet, a warm cup of tea, soft sunlight, and the scent of lavender in the air. I closed my eyes and let the sun brush across my face. The wrinkles by my eyes weren't just from age. They were scars, etched by time, one silent cut at a time. There was a time I thought I could hold a family together with the same hands that built an empire. But Jonathan grew up pulled away, thinking it was best. Then came Rebecca, confident, beautiful, ambitious, and distant from the very beginning. I was never invited for Thanksgiving at their home, never asked about anything that mattered in Jonathan's life. The gifts I sent Grace were always met with awkward glances and Rebecca's quiet reminders, thanks, but Grace prefers more modern things now. But Grace was different. Every now and then, she would sneak handwritten notes to me, ask for help picking a dress, ask about my apple pie recipe from Christmases long gone. Little things, but enough to make me feel I hadn't vanished completely. I turned the wedding card over, read her words again, so carefully written, I hope you'll be there. I want you to see me walk into this new chapter. I smiled softly, a smile no one would see. Some presences don't need announcements. I knew I would go to be remembered in my own way. And finally, the day arrived. I stood before the mirror, adjusted the brim of my hat, and whispered to myself, quietly, as always, some wounds don't bleed. They stay silent, so deep, even a passing glance can make them ache all over again. I stepped into the seaside garden where the wedding reception was already set. No one turned, no one greeted me. Under Charleston's soft evening sun, the old oaks cast gentle shadows over long tables draped in crisp white linen. Pastel cocktail dresses shimmered in the light. Linen suits drifted past like part of the ocean breeze. I wore a long ash blue dress, simple, modest. A wide-brimmed hat shaded half my face. An old brown clutch tucked under my arm. No jewelry, no perfume, just a quiet figure among the polished noise. The buffet stretched long, with Southern classics, smoked BBQ coleslaw in white porcelain bowls, and a tiered wedding cake covered in vanilla buttercream, adorned with tiny sprigs of lavender. The air was thick with the scent of roasted meat and fresh-baked sweetness. Glasses clinked, laughter rang out, and somewhere in between, the sharp clang of ambition masked as politeness. I walked slowly down the petal-strewn path, eyes scanning the crowd. Some glances flicked toward me, brief and different. No one spoke. Rebecca stood out, of course. A deep red gown hugging her frame, jewelry sparkling in the sun. She stood in the center of a group, smiling just enough to seem gracious, but never losing that poised control. Jonathan was beside her, stiff, in his tailored suit, like an accessory she brought along. I caught part of Rebecca's voice, crisp and practiced. My husband and I are both legal directors at Sterling Ventures Group. It's a family company, you know. We're proud to continue its tradition and long-term growth. Polite nods. A few murmurs of praise. No one asked more. No one mentioned the one who built it. I stopped near the edge of the garden, choosing a seat half hidden behind a cluster of peonies. From there, I could see the small stage beneath a broad tree, rows of chairs lined up neatly for the ceremony. No one approached me. No one offered a seat. That old, hollow feeling settled into my chest again, familiar, worn smooth, like the table in my kitchen. I sat still, one hand resting gently on my clutch, afraid even a small movement might make me feel more out of place in all this polished splendor. Then a hand touched my shoulder softly. "Vivian." The voice was gentle, tinged with surprise. I turned. Evelyn Brooks. After all these years, her silver hair pinned back neatly, wearing a cream linen dress. She had always been that way, simple, kind, perceptive. "Oh my, it really is you." Evelyn smiled, leaning in. "I didn't recognize you at first. You haven't changed, Vivian." I returned a faint smile. Still the same, just quieter now. We shook hands lightly. Evelyn sat beside me, her eyes scanning the scene before us, then pausing on Rebecca. "She's beautiful," Evelyn said, her tone sharp, despite the words. "But I don't think I care much for this atmosphere." I said nothing. Across the lawn, Rebecca's voice carried on, even and proud. "And even with a volatile market, we've preserved the values our family instilled from the very beginning." I sipped my Earl Grey, letting the warm bitterness bloom on my tongue. No one asked about Vivian Lancaster. No one remembered the woman who once stood at the head of the boardroom, commanding silence from silver-haired men. Grace passed by, holding a bouquet of lavender for the photos. She glanced at me just a flicker, and then, unable to help herself, reached out and squeezed my hand. Quick, quiet, unseen. I squeezed back. Just as quick, just as quiet. No one noticed. But I knew. The party went on, stories of markets and mergers, of curated lives and polished success layered on every white-covered table. I listened, but I didn't speak. My silence wrapped around me like a shawl, part shield, part exile. Evelyn leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "They've forgotten you, haven't they?" she asked softly. I only shrugged. Some questions don't need answers. On the stage, the MC took the mic and began introducing the speakers. Rebecca stepped up, her deep red dress ablaze among the pastel hues, microphone in hand, like a scepter. "Thank you all for joining us," she began, her voice smooth, rehearsed. "Our family has faced many challenges, and thanks to the younger generation, Sterling Ventures Group continues to thrive." Polite applause. I sat motionless, sipping the last of my tea, eyes drifting to the sky behind the old oak trees. A bitter taste lingered, not just on my tongue, but somewhere deeper. They may have erased me from their story, but history hasn't. And through the shimmer and show, a familiar silhouette appeared at the gate. Sometimes the past doesn't return with noise. It only needs a familiar silhouette. And suddenly, the world forgets how to breathe. No one spoke. Conversations dropped mid-sentence, like someone had turned down the volume. The jazz band in the corner kept playing, but their notes now sounded distant, misplaced. Thomas Sterling. I recognized him instantly, though it had been years. Snow-white hair, a perfectly tailored navy suit. That old ebony cane tapping steadily against the stone walkway. He walked slowly, unhurried, like the world moved only when he allowed it to. I wasn't surprised. I had been waiting for him. Near the stage, Rebecca's fingers tightened around her wine glass. She turned to Jonathan, whispering something sharp and fast. Jonathan only nodded, eyes fixed on the man who had just arrived. Thomas didn't pause to greet anyone. No handshakes, no pleasantries. He walked straight toward me. Eyes followed him, curious, confused, unsettled. They didn't know who he was, but they knew this wasn't part of the afternoon script. He stopped at my table and gave a slight bow. "Madam Lancaster," he said, his voice low, warm, and clear enough for everyone nearby to hear. "It's good to see you again." It was just a greeting, but it echoed like a declaration. I gave a slight nod. "And you as well, Mr. Sterling. We didn't need more. We had once shared far more important moments. Private meetings, late-night dinners, where companies were bought and sold. Days when a nod from the two of us could shift the lives of hundreds." Thomas reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out an ivory envelope sealed with red wax. He placed it before me. His cane tapped once gently against the leg of my chair. "What belongs to you," he said softly, "has always belonged to you." I reached for it, feeling the coarse texture of the envelope beneath my fingertips. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Some things don't need to be read to be understood. Rebecca hadn't moved, but her expression had. The chill in her eyes cracked into something less certain. Her grip on the wine glass faltered. She glanced at Jonathan, then at Thomas, trying to read him. Grace stood near the stage, holding her lavender bouquet. She caught my eye, and for a moment her lips curved into the faintest smile. She understood without needing a word. Thomas turned to face the crowd, leaning gently on his cane, his voice calm and measured. "If I may," he said, "I'd like to honor an old promise." No one dared interrupt, but tension rippled like a taut string. Murmurs rose, sideways glances, raised brows. The atmosphere held its breath. Beside me, Evelyn gripped the handle of her soft leather bag. She leaned in. "Vivian, what's going on?" I didn't answer. I simply sat still, hands in my lap. The envelope resting quietly between us, like a relic at an altar I was never meant to have a seat at. Rebecca blinked rapidly, then marched toward Jonathan, hissing under her breath. He looked weary, torn, that same look I'd seen 100 times, stuck between two women he never truly understood. Thomas looked at her, no smirk, no scorn, just a long, direct gaze that saw more than it said. The jazz band shifted into a slow ballad. A lone saxophone cried somewhere in the distance. The wind off the sea stirred the white drapes tied to the wedding arch, making them flutter like fragile wings. I traced the envelope with my fingers. I already knew what was inside old promises, forgotten commitments, now returned whole. Thomas Sterling was not a man who broke his word. They may have erased me from their version of the story, but history hadn't. Sometimes the past doesn't come demanding justice. It simply returns to reclaim dignity. Truth doesn't need a spotlight. It waits quietly until the moment it can speak for itself. Thomas Sterling stood at the front of the garden, his eyes sweeping across the silent crowd. A breeze from the ocean stirred the salty air, bringing with it the murmur of distant waves. The jazz band quietly disappeared backstage, their final notes fading into the tension that now gripped the gathering. I remained seated. The envelope Thomas had given me still rested in my hand. The red wax seal, emblazoned with the old Sterling Ventures logo, seemed to warm beneath my fingers. Beside me, Evelyn sat stiffly, clutching the handle of her handbag, her eyes locked on Thomas, with a look that held both dread and hope. He raised the microphone to his lips. His voice came steady, low, and clear. "If you'll allow me, I'd like to speak for a moment about history, the history of Sterling Ventures Group, the place where we now stand." A pause. You could feel the stillness deepen. Even the clinking of glasses from a far corner sounded out of place now. String lights overhead cast a soft glow through the branches, bathing the lawn in something almost dreamlike. More than 40 years ago, Thomas said, before the market even noticed us before Sterling Ventures had a name, there was one person who laid the very first brick. He let the silence stretch. "It wasn't me," he continued. "It wasn't any of the powerful gentlemen here today. It was a woman many of us have forgotten, or worse, never truly knew." A stir rippled through the crowd. Glances exchanged, awkward smiles, tense posture. Rebecca stood beside Jonathan, her face pale, her champagne glass tilted slightly on the verge of spilling. Thomas took a breath and spoke the truth aloud. "Vivian Lancaster, founder of Sterling Ventures Group, the woman who built its foundation, who shaped it, who steered it through the most uncertain years with quiet resilience. No applause, no reaction, only silence, heavy, undeniable silence. I didn't move, but the weight of their eyes began to shift toward me. At first curiosity, then surprise, and finally something like respect, hesitant but real. Thomas went on. His tone was calm but resolute. "She never asked for recognition, never demanded a title. Even when people assumed she had stepped away, she remained watching, guiding, keeping us on course." Beside me, Evelyn exhaled, as if she had finally let go of something she'd carried for too long. She turned, gave me a small smile, quiet, complete. Thomas looked out across the garden once more, eyes touching each face. His voice lowered, but it carried deeper. "Today, I believe it's time those unseen efforts are finally named. It's time history gave her what it should have long ago." He lowered the mic, then slowly extended his hand toward me, palm open, steady, solemn. "Madam Lancaster, if you would." I didn't rise immediately. I let his words settle into the space around me, let them breathe. From the far side of the lawn, the MC stepped forward, voice warm and respectful. "At the request of the bride, Grace, we would now like to invite Mrs. Vivian Lancaster, the woman Grace calls her greatest inspiration, to share a few words with the couple." No clapping, no shifting in seats, just stunned silence. Not from disinterest, but from the quiet shame of suddenly realizing what had been overlooked. I stood. My ash-blue dress swayed with emotion, the brown leather clutch still in hand. I walked toward the stage, one step at a time. Rebecca froze. Her champagne trembled the liquid inside, catching the light with every tremor of her hand. Jonathan stared blank-eyed. Grace whispered something to the person beside her, but I didn't catch it. I reached Thomas. He gave me a second, respectful bow, then stepped back, giving me the space. I didn't touch the microphone right away. I stood in silence, letting the weight of their gaze settle. No smile, no nod, just me, still steady and true. Then I raised the microphone and spoke softly but clearly. "They thought I stepped back because I failed, but the truth is, I never left. And I stepped onto the stage, bringing with me the silence of all the years they forgot I was still there. Some victories need no fireworks. Silence can be the highest form of glory. I stood still beneath the soft stage lights without even lifting the microphone. The silence wrapped around us like a velvet curtain sinking deep into every breath. Only the distant sound of the ocean remained its eternal rhythm, playing quietly behind what I was about to say. I thought back to the day I received Grace's wedding invitation. A fragile card, heavy with unspoken weight. That day, I made a promise to myself I would go, to be remembered in my own way. And now, this was that moment. I let my voice rise warm and steady, not loud, just enough for every ear to catch it. Happiness isn't something we're given. It's something we build, with days of kindness and quiet choices to do what's right. Not a sound followed, no laughter, no whispers, only listening, deep and reverent. I paused, letting the words drift through the space between us, filling the unseen gaps between people who now finally understood. I smiled gently, slowly, and turned to find a familiar face in the crowd. I wish for Grace, the little girl who once held my hand, to build her own happiness. Strong, quiet, and enduring. There was nothing more to add. Applause followed, not loud, not showy, but steady, sincere, a quiet agreement that no words could match. I bowed my head, quietly, as I had arrived. No need to bind anyone. No need to prove anything. I turned and walked down the shallow wooden steps, my ash blue dress brushing lightly against the polished floor. Grace waited at the bottom. She ran to me, throwing her arms around me, a small frame clinging tightly, as if afraid I'd vanish again. I smoothed her dark brown hair, saying nothing. The hug, the touch, it said everything. Tears glistened in Grace's eyes, but her smile shone through radiant beneath the warm, golden lights. Evelyn Brooks came forward too. She didn't hug me, didn't speak in long phrases. She simply placed a hand on my arm and squeezed gently. "I always believed in you," she whispered, eyes shining behind delicate glasses. Nothing more was needed. Rebecca stood at a distance. Her hands hung by her sides. The champagne glass, gone. The crowd that once surrounded her, gone too. No more admiring eyes, no more eager handshakes. She stood alone, striking but adrift in the light and the lull of the sea breeze. Jonathan stood nearby, uncertain, caught again in the space between past and present. He said nothing, did nothing. But Grace, she held on to me, like I was the only solid ground left. And maybe I was. Thomas Sterling stepped forward. His cane tapped gently against the earth. He paused in front of me, bowed slightly. "Vivian," just one word, but within it, respect, recognition. I nodded. Nothing more. We stood there in the soft light, in the hush of the ocean, letting the noise of the party pass by unnoticed. No one could take my worth from me, because it had never depended on their eyes. It lived in me. And so, as the night came to an end, I knew it was time to leave. Not to disappear, but to begin again, on a path of my own. Sometimes we leave not to forget, but to remember how strong we once were. The Amtrak station in Charleston had a quiet, chilled beauty that morning. Long oak benches lined both sides of the hall. Pale sunlight spilled through the mist, settling on the damp cement floor. I pulled a small suitcase behind me, its wheels whispering across the worn tile. My beige trench coat hugged me lightly, just enough for the cool morning air. Far ahead, the red letters on the departure board flickered, the train to New York. Grace stood beside me. Her long hair fell gently over her shoulders, her face soft, with a sadness she couldn't quite hide. But she smiled bravely, and her eyes shone more with pride than sorrow. Grandma Grace said, handing me a soft leather notebook, deep brown, for you to write down the places you visit. I took it, brushing my aging fingers over the cover. The leather was smooth, still smelled of fresh paper, its corners sharp and unbent. You always dreamed of traveling across the country. By train, Grace whispered. Now it's time, isn't it? I smiled. Didn't answer right away. Rebecca stood at a distance, across the benches. She watched us. Her expression caught somewhere between hesitation and regret. She didn't step closer, didn't speak. Her hands tightened around her purse straps, as if carrying something heavier than any luggage. Jonathan stood awkwardly beside her, hands shoved into his coat pockets, eyes avoiding mine. I nodded just once, toward Rebecca. No anger, no demand for apology, just a nod. Enough to say, I forgive you, without needing the words. The loudspeaker crackled. A soft voice announced boarding for the New York line. People stirred. Suitcases rolled. The familiar hollow sound of parting filled the station. I turned to Grace, wrapped her in one last embrace. She clung tightly, shoulders trembling. I didn't try to comfort her with words. I simply held her. A brief, quiet hug, deep enough to say everything. Wishing you a journey to find yourself again, she whispered. I let go slowly, took the handle of my suitcase, and walked toward the platform, each step deliberate. The morning sun stretched my shadow long across the damp concrete. With every footfall I let go of weight, of years, of what no longer needed to stay. I didn't look back, not because I forgot, but because I knew some things are meant to stay behind, tucked safely in memory to make room for what's waiting ahead. On the train, I found my seat by the window. A simple seat, brown leather, worn at the corners, the scent of wood and metal lingering in the air. I placed my suitcase above, held the leather notebook in my lap. The train began to move. The world outside started to slip past low rooftops, dark green trees, the blurred edges of a town I once called mine. Salt wind crept in through a small window crack, the scent of the sea still lingering. I opened the notebook. On the first page, Grace's careful handwriting, wishing you a journey to find yourself again. I ran my fingers over the words, and in her ink, I felt her voice, her eyes, her love. Outside, the world widened. Back roads, fields, quiet towns, all waiting. I leaned back in my seat, closed my eyes, and let the rhythm of the train carry me forward. Sometimes starting over is the greatest reward for those brave enough to leave. The train moved on, carrying with it a woman who once chose silence as her lifelong companion. I used to believe love meant sacrifice, that loving others meant quietly enduring. Until I learned this, if I don't value myself, then even love can be taken for granted. Like an old blanket that once warmed a household through long, bitter winters, only to be folded away and forgotten once no longer needed. If this story touched something within you, take a quiet moment. And remember the silent kindnesses still choosing to exist, just for you.
Judge, can I show something my father does not know I have? My grandson Liam's voice broke the tense silence of that courtroom. He was only 9 years old, but his raised hand trembled with a determination I had never seen in someone so small. The judge looked at him with curiosity, then at Michael, my son, who immediately turned pale. Victoria, my daughter-in-law, stiffened in her seat. I did not understand anything. I only knew that my world had collapsed that day. That day I lost my son, but I also found myself. Let me tell you how I got here. How a mother who gave everything ended up being sued by her own son to take away the only place I had in this world. My house, my home. The refuge I built with tears, sweat, and sacrifice. It all began 3 months earlier, on an afternoon that seemed ordinary. I was in the kitchen baking the chocolate cake that Liam loved. The house smelled of vanilla and cinnamon. The white curtains moved gently in the October breeze. I could hear my grandson playing in the yard, his laughter filling every corner of that home I loved so much. Michael arrived with Victoria earlier than usual. Normally they came on Sundays for family lunch, but that day was a Friday. Something in their faces sent a chill down my spine. Victoria did not greet me. Michael avoided my gaze. "Mom, we need to talk," my son said in a voice I did not recognize. Cold, distant, as if he were speaking to a stranger. I dried my hands on my apron and invited them to sit. Liam ran in to hug me, but Victoria yanked him by the arm abruptly. "Go to your room," she ordered. My grandson looked at me, confused, before obeying. Something was not right. We sat in the living room, the same living room where Michael had taken his first steps, where we had celebrated every Christmas after his father died, where I had stayed up so many nights sewing dresses for other women just to pay for his college education. "Mom, Victoria and I have been thinking," Michael began, without looking me in the eye. "We need our space. We are a family now, and this house is very large. Too large for you alone." I stayed silent. I did not understand where this conversation was going. Victoria spoke up, a smile on her face that did not reach her eyes. "What Michael means, Eleanor, is that we think it would be better for everyone if you looked for a smaller place. An apartment, maybe. Something more suited to your age. There are stairs here. It is dangerous for an older woman." An older woman? I was 65 years old, not 90. I went up those stairs every day without a problem. The same stairs I had cleaned for 40 years. "I do not understand," I managed to say. "This is my house. Why would I have to leave?" Michael finally looked at me. In his eyes, I saw something that chilled my blood. Determination. "Because we need it more than you do, Mom. Liam is growing. He needs his own space. Victoria wants to renovate, make changes. And you can live anywhere." "Anywhere? After everything I had sacrificed for him?" "This house is in my name," I said, my voice trembling. "Your father and I bought it 40 years ago. We raised you here. His memory is here." Victoria snorted with disdain. "Memories do not pay the bills, Eleanor. This property is worth over $250,000. It is a waste for you to live here alone, clinging to the past. Michael is your only son. It is only natural that this house belongs to him." "It will belong to him when I die," I replied, with a firmness I did not know I had. "As long as I am alive, this is my house." Victoria's face hardened. Michael clenched his fists. There was a long, heavy silence. "Then you leave us no choice," my son said, standing up. From his briefcase, he took out some papers that he dropped onto the coffee table. "These are legal papers. We are suing you to vacate the property. Our lawyer says we have the right to claim the house because you cannot maintain it properly. It is a matter of family well-being." I could not breathe. The walls seemed to be closing in on me. My son, my own son, was kicking me out of my house. "Michael, please," I begged. "Do not do this. We can talk. We can find another solution." He shook his head. "It is already decided, Mom. You have 30 days to find a lawyer or accept a settlement. We can give you $20,000 to rent something. It is more than generous. $20,000? For the house that was worth over $250,000? For the home where I had built my entire life?" Victoria was already at the door. "This is not personal, Eleanor. It is just common sense. It is time for you to think about your future. A nursing home, maybe. There are some very good ones in the area. A nursing home? I was 65 years old and in perfect health. I was still working as a seamstress, still tending to my garden, still cooking for my grandson. Michael turned his back to me and walked toward the exit. Before leaving, he paused for a moment. I am sorry, Mom, but Victoria is right. It is time for each of us to go our own way. The door closed. I was left alone in that living room full of memories. On the walls were the photos of Michael since he was a baby. His college graduation, his wedding. In every one of those photos, I was there, smiling, proud of my son. Have you ever felt the floor drop out from under you? That everything you believed in for years crumbles in seconds? Tell me in the comments if someone you loved has ever betrayed you like that. I could not sleep that night. I sat in the kitchen, looking at the walls I had painted myself, the furniture I had bought with so much effort. Every corner of that house had a story. Every object held a memory of my husband, of my life, of my sacrifice. I remembered when we bought this house. My husband worked in construction, and I sewed wedding dresses. We saved for 5 years to make the down payment, $200 a month for 30 years. We never missed a single payment. Not even when my husband got sick and the medical bills were drowning us. When my husband died 3 years ago, I thought I could not go on. He was my everything, my partner, my best friend, the father of my son. We lost the battle against cancer after a 2-year fight. The treatments cost more than $50,000. We sold the car, the jewelry, everything of value we had. But we never touched the house. It was the only thing we had left, the only inheritance we could leave to Michael. My husband died in the upstairs bedroom. In his final days, he made me promise I would never sell this house. This is our family's legacy, he told me in a weak voice. Our history is here, Eleanor, protected. For Michael, for Liam, for us, I promised him. I swore to him that this house would always be our home. And now, my own son was kicking me out of it. The following days were a nightmare. Every morning I woke up hoping it had all been a bad dream. But the legal papers were still on the coffee table, reminding me of the cruel reality. My son had sued me. My only son wanted to take my house from me. I called Margaret, my best friend, for 30 years. She was the only person I could talk to. She came over that same afternoon with a thermos of tea and the warm hug I needed so badly. I cannot believe it, Margaret said, sitting beside me. Michael was always such a good boy. What happened to him? Victoria, I replied bitterly. She changed everything. Ever since they got married 5 years ago, Michael is a different person. Margaret nodded. She had noticed it too. At family gatherings, Victoria always made comments about my house. That the curtains were old-fashioned, that the furniture was too old, that the neighborhood was not what it used to be. Small comments that I tried to ignore, but that now made sense. She wants to sell the house, I told Margaret. Michael offered me $20,000. This property is worth over $250,000. Margaret turned pale. That is robbery, Eleanor. You cannot accept that. You need a lawyer. But I did not have money for lawyers. My savings barely reached $8,000. I lived on my pension and the sewing jobs I still managed to get. It was not much, but it was enough for me to live with dignity. I do not know what to do, I admitted. I cannot fight against my own son. Margaret took my hands. Eleanor, he is fighting against you. You are just defending yourself. This is your house, your life. You cannot give up like this. She was right, but my heart was broken into 1,000 pieces. That week, Michael did not come to visit me. He did not call either. It was as if I had ceased to exist for him. But Liam did come. My grandson showed up one Wednesday afternoon, alone, with his school backpack. "Grandma," he said, hugging me tight, "is it true Dad wants you to leave?" I knelt to his level. His brown eyes, so much like my husband's, were filled with tears. "Yes, my love, it is true." "But why? This is your house. This is where you always are." "Sometimes adults make difficult decisions," I said, trying to smile. "Your dad thinks it is for the best." Liam shook his head. "Mom says this house is too old and ugly. She says she wants to sell it and buy a modern condo downtown. She says you are selfish for not wanting to leave. Every word was a direct blow to the chest. That is how Victoria talked about me in front of my grandson. She called me selfish. She said my house was ugly. What do you think, Liam? I asked him. He hugged me tighter. I think this is the best house in the world. It smells nice here. You make me cookies here. You tell me stories about Grandpa here. I do not want you to leave, Grandma, I cried. I could not hold it back. My grandson, a 9-year-old boy, showed more love and loyalty than my own adult son. Promise me something, Liam, I said, drying my tears. No matter what happens, remember that your grandma will always love you, and that this house was always a home full of love. Do you promise me? He nodded. I promise, Grandma. When Victoria came to pick him up an hour later, she did not even get out of the car. She honked the horn impatiently. Liam gave me one last hug and ran to the car. I saw how Victoria yelled something at him as soon as he got in. My grandson lowered his head, ashamed. That night I made a decision. I was not going to give up. I was not going to let them take the only thing I had left. Margaret was right. I needed to fight. The next day, I went to look for legal help. I went into 3 law offices. In the first 2, they asked for retainers of $5,000. I did not have that kind of money. In the third, an older lawyer named Patrick listened to me attentively. Mrs. Fagundes, he said after reviewing the papers. This is unusual. Your son has no legal basis to evict you. The house is in your name. You pay the taxes. There is no reason why a judge would order your eviction. Then why are they trying? I asked, confused. Patrick sighed. Because they are hoping you will get scared and accept the settlement. $20,000 is a pittance for a property of that value. They are betting that you will not want to face your son in court. I do not want to, I admitted. But I do not want to lose my house either. Then you have to defend yourself, Patrick said firmly. I can help you. And I am not going to charge you up front. I know cases like this. I know what family manipulation looks like. I accepted. I had no other choice. The following weeks were hell. Michael hired an expensive lawyer who filed documents alleging that I could not maintain the property properly, that the house was in disrepair, that it posed a danger, that I did not have the resources for the necessary repairs. It was all lies. My house was in perfect condition. The new roof we installed 2 years ago, the plumbing we repaired, the updated electrical wiring. Everything was documented. Everything was paid for. But they had photos. Photos showing a leak in the ceiling. Photos of a wall with dampness. Photos of a loose outlet. It took me days to realize. Those photos were old, from 3 years ago. Before the repairs, Michael had saved them and was now using them against me. My own son was lying to take my house. Patrick submitted the receipts for all the repairs. The certificates from the electricians and plumbers. Current photos that showed the excellent condition of the property. They are going to lose, he assured me. They do not have a case. But I had already lost something much more valuable than the house. I had lost my son. The hearing was set for a Tuesday in November. 3 months after Michael handed me those papers. 3 months of not speaking to him. 3 months of crying every night. 3 months of wondering where I had failed as a mother. The night before the hearing, I could not close my eyes. I lay awake staring at my bedroom ceiling, the same room where my husband had slept beside me for so many years. I could feel his absence more than ever. If he were alive, none of this would be happening. Michael would never have dared to disrespect me this way. I got up before dawn and made coffee. My hands trembled as I held the cup. In a few hours, I would be in front of a judge, defending my right to live in my own house. Against my own son, Margaret arrived early to go with me. You are going to be fine, she said as she helped me pick out what to wear. We chose a simple gray dress. Nothing flashy. Patrick had told me it was important to make a good impression, to show that I was a dignified, hard-working, coherent woman. We arrived at the courthouse an hour early. Patrick was already there, reviewing documents. Ready? He asked me. I nodded, although inside I was falling apart. Michael arrived 15 minutes later with Victoria. She was wearing an elegant suit that probably cost more than $1,000. My son was wearing the suit I had given him as a gift. That irony hurt me more than I expected. They did not even look at me when they entered. They walked past me as if I were invisible. But then I saw Liam. My grandson was with them, holding his father's hand. When our eyes met, his filled with tears. He tried to pull away to run to me, but Victoria yanked him hard. "Stay still," she hissed at him. "Why did they bring the child?" I asked Patrick in a low voice. He frowned. "Strategy. They want to show they are a united family that needs the space. They are using the child to generate sympathy." I felt sick. They were using my grandson as a pawn in their cruel game. The courtroom was cold and austere. We sat on opposite sides, me with Patrick and Margaret. The three of them on the other side with their lawyer, a severe-looking man named Gregory. Between us was a chasm that had not existed before. The judge entered, and we all stood. He was a man in his 50s, with a serious but not unkind expression. He sat and began to review the case. "All right," he said, adjusting his glasses. "We have here an eviction lawsuit filed by Mr. Bryce, Michael Fagundes, against his mother, Mrs. Eleanor Fagundes. We will proceed to hear the arguments from both parties. Mr. Gregory, you may begin." Michael's lawyer stood up with a confident smile. For 20 minutes, he spoke about how I was an older woman living alone in a house that was too large, that I did not have the resources to maintain it, that I was a danger to myself, that my son, out of filial love, only wanted what was best for me. "My client is willing to offer his mother the generous sum of $25,000 so she can find a more suitable place," Gregory said. They had raised the offer by $5,000, as if that made it less offensive. "Furthermore," the lawyer continued, "Mrs. Fagundes has no stable income. She lives on a minimal pension and sporadic sewing jobs. How can she guarantee the maintenance of a property of that size? It is irresponsible." He presented the old photos as evidence. Photos that Patrick had already proven were from years ago. But the lawyer showed them with dramatic flair, as if they were irrefutable proof of my negligence. When it was Patrick's turn, he stood up calmly. "Your Honor, this is not a case of family well-being. This is an attempt at dispossession. Mrs. Fagundes is the rightful owner of this property. She bought it with her late husband 40 years ago. She has paid her taxes religiously. The house is in excellent condition, as demonstrated by these recent repair certificates." Patrick presented all the documents. Receipts, current photographs, inspection certificates. Everything proved that my house was in perfect condition. "Furthermore," Patrick continued, "Mrs. Fagundes is 65 years old, not 90. She is fully capable of living independently. She works, she takes care of her home, and she has an active life. There is no legal reason to evict her from her own property." The judge listened attentively. Then he addressed Michael. "Mr. Fagundes, can you explain to me why you are suing your mother for a property that legally belongs to her?" Michael stood up. For a moment, I saw uncertainty on his face, but Victoria squeezed his arm, and that doubt disappeared. "Your Honor, my son," began in a firm voice, "I love my mother. All I want is her well-being. That house is too much for her. The stairs are dangerous. The upkeep is expensive. She is stubborn and does not want to accept help, but as her son, it is my responsibility to take care of her. The financial offer is so she can live comfortably in a more appropriate place." Every word was a lie wrapped in supposed concern. I knew my son. I knew when he was lying. And in that moment, he was lying with every breath. "And what do you plan to do with the property if your mother agrees to the eviction?" the judge asked. Michael hesitated. Victoria leaned in and whispered something to him. "Move in there with my family, Your Honor, so my son can grow up in a better environment." The judge took notes. "I see. Mrs. Fagundes, do you wish to say anything?" Patrick gestured for me to stand. I felt my legs trembling, but I held firm. "Your Honor, that house is all I have. My husband and I built it with sacrifice. He died 3 years ago and made me promise never to sell it. It is the only place where I feel his presence. It is my home. I do not understand why my son wants to take it from me." My voice broke at the end. Tears ran down my cheeks, and I could not stop them. It was not an act. It was real, raw, devastating pain. I saw Michael look away. Victoria, on the other hand, watched me with absolute coldness. There was not a shred of compassion in her eyes. The judge sighed. Mrs. Fagundes, I understand your emotional situation, but I must base my decision on legal facts. The property is in your name. There is no evidence that you are incapable of maintaining it. There is no legal reason to order your eviction. I felt a glimmer of hope. However, the judge continued, I also understand a son's concern for his mother. I am going to give you 30 days to reach a family agreement. If there is no resolution in that time, we will return to this courtroom, and I will issue a final verdict. But I warn you, family ties are sacred. You should be able to resolve this without the need for a judge. 30 more days of agony, 30 more days of uncertainty. There is something else, Your Honor, Gregory said, standing up. We have a witness who can attest to the state of the property and Mrs. Fagundes' ability to maintain it. A witness? Who? Gregory called for someone who was waiting outside. The door opened, and Susan, my next-door neighbor, walked in. The woman with whom I had shared coffee for 20 years. The one who had always seemed kind and trustworthy. Susan avoided my gaze as she walked to the stand. Susan swore to tell the truth with her hand on the Bible. I could not believe what I was seeing. My neighbor, the woman with whom I had shared so many afternoons of coffee, so many conversations about our children, our grandchildren, the woman who had always smiled at me over the garden fence. Mrs. Susan, Gregory began in a friendly tone. You have lived next to Mrs. Fagundes for 20 years, correct? That is right, she answered in a soft voice, without looking at me. Can you tell us what you have observed regarding the state of the property and Mrs. Fagundes' ability to maintain it? Susan took a deep breath. Well, Eleanor is a good woman. But I have noticed that lately she is struggling. I have seen leaks in the roof. The yard is neglected. Sometimes she forgets to turn off the lights. One time I found her disoriented on the street. Every word was a lie, a stab straight to the heart. My yard was immaculate. I had never been disoriented. The leaks had been repaired 2 years ago. Why do you think she is lying? I whispered to Patrick. He pressed his lips together. Money. They probably paid her. The judge asked Susan a few more questions. She continued to weave lies with a convincing voice. When she finished, she stepped down from the stand without looking at me. Victoria smiled at her. Michael nodded his head. Then I understood everything. They had bought her. Patrick cross-examined Susan, pointing out inconsistencies in her testimony. When exactly did you see the leaks? On what date did you find me disoriented? Susan could not give specific answers. She contradicted herself several times. The judge took note of it. Anything else? The judge asked, looking at both lawyers. No, Your Honor. They both said at almost the same time. The judge was about to bang his gavel when a small voice broke the silence. Judge, can I show something my father does not know I have? We all turned. Liam was on his feet, his backpack on, and his hand raised. He was trembling, but there was determination in his eyes. Liam, sit down, Victoria hissed, trying to pull him back. No, Mom, my grandson said in a firm voice. I have to do this. Michael looked at him, confused. What are you doing? The judge observed the scene with interest. Young man, how old are you? 9, sir. Your Honor, Liam replied respectfully. And what is it you want to show? Liam took his tablet out of his backpack. I have videos. Videos I recorded without them knowing. Victoria turned white as a sheet. Michael jumped to his feet. What videos? Liam, put that away right now. But the judge raised his hand. Mr. Fagundes, sit down. I want to see what the boy has. Liam walked to the front of the room with his tablet. Victoria tried to stop him, but the bailiff stepped in her way. My grandson handed the device to the judge with trembling hands. There are several videos, Your Honor. I recorded them because I knew what they were doing was wrong. My grandma taught me that lying is wrong. And they are lying. The judge connected the tablet to the courtroom's monitor. We all fell silent. The first video began to play. The image was shaky, recorded from the perspective of a hidden child. It showed the living room of Michael and Victoria's house. It was night. The voices were clear. How much do you think we can get for the house? Victoria asked. The appraiser said we can sell it for $260,000. Maybe more, Michael replied. Perfect. With that, we can buy the condo downtown I showed you. The 3-bedroom one with the city view. It cost $220,000. We would have $40,000 left over for new furniture. And my mother? We give her $25,000, and she can find a place. That is enough for her to rent something for a couple of years. It is not our problem. My heart stopped. The tears began to fall uncontrollably. They were talking about my house, my life, as if it were just a business transaction. And Michael, my son, was agreeing. The judge stopped the video. Are there more? Liam nodded. Yes, sir. A lot more. The second video showed Victoria talking on the phone. Yes, Susan. I will give you $2,000 if you testify in court that the old woman is senile. You just have to say you have seen her confused, that the house is in bad shape. It is easy, Susan. They had paid her exactly as Patrick suspected. The third video was the most painful. It showed Victoria and Michael in my kitchen when I was not there. Victoria was taking pictures of specific corners, angles that made everything look worse than it was. Take one of the outlet over there, Victoria said. It looks like it is loose. And another of that stain on the wall. Is this not a little dirty? Michael asked. It is strategy, honey. Your mother is stubborn. She is not going to leave quietly. We need to pressure her. She is my mother, Victoria. And this is our chance. Do you want to live in a rental your whole life? Do you want Liam to grow up in that tiny apartment? Your mother is old. She has already lived her life. Now it is our turn. Total silence in the courtroom. I could hear my own ragged breathing. The judge's brow was furrowed, clearly angry about what he was seeing. How many videos are there in total? The judge asked. 12, Your Honor, Liam answered. I recorded them over the last 2 months. I heard Mom and Dad talking about how they were going to get my grandma out of her house. I knew it was wrong, but I did not know what to do. Until today. Victoria was furious. Liam, how dare you? You are grounded. Give me that tablet right now. No, my grandson said, his voice trembling but firm. I am not going to let you do this to Grandma. She does not deserve this. She has always been good to us. She makes us food. She takes care of us. She loves us, and you only think about money. Michael had his head in his hands. He could not look at anyone. The judge played 2 more videos. In one, Victoria was talking to someone about hiring an aggressive lawyer who would scare the old woman until she took the deal. In another, she was seen mocking me, calling me the stupid old woman who thinks she is queen of the world. When the videos finished, the silence in the room was deafening. The judge took off his glasses and cleaned them slowly. When he spoke, his voice was as cold as ice. In my 25 years as a judge, I have seen many things. But this is particularly disgusting. He turned to Gregory, Michael's lawyer. Did you know about this? Gregory quickly shook his head. No, Your Honor. My client did not inform me of these facts. Then your client deceived you, the judge said. He then looked at Michael. Mr. Fagundes, stand up. Michael stood up slowly. He was pale, defeated. You came into this courtroom pretending to be concerned for your mother, but these videos show the truth. You are not concerned for her. You want to steal her property. You and your wife conspired to dispossess a 65-year-old woman of her only home. You paid a witness to lie under oath. You fabricated false evidence. The judge banged his gavel hard. The sound echoed through the room like thunder. This is fraud, conspiracy, and evidence tampering. I could bring criminal charges against you both. Victoria stood up, furious. That child did not have permission to record. Those videos are illegal. They cannot be used as evidence. The judge looked at her with contempt. Sit down, ma'am. In this state, a minor can record conversations in his own home without consent. And even if it were legally questionable, the content of these videos reveals criminal intent that I, as a judge, have an obligation to consider. He turned to Susan, who was trying to shrink in her seat. Mrs. Susan, you have just committed perjury. You lied under oath in exchange for money. That is a serious crime. I am going to order a full investigation into your testimony. Susan began to cry. I am sorry. I needed the money. My husband is sick. They offered me $2,000. I did not think it was that serious. You did not think lying in a court of law was serious? The judge asked, incredulous. Bailiff, take down her information. She will be receiving a summons. The judge took a deep breath, trying to control his evident anger. Then he looked at me. His eyes softened slightly. Mrs. Fagundes, I am deeply sorry you had to go through this. No one should be betrayed this way, much less by their own family. I could not speak. The tears would not let me. Margaret squeezed my hand tightly. My decision is as follows, the judge continued. The eviction lawsuit is completely dismissed. Mrs. Eleanor Fagundes is and will remain the sole, rightful owner of her property. No person has the right to evict her, intimidate her, or pressure her to leave her home. Patrick sighed in relief beside me. Furthermore, the judge looked sternly at Michael and Victoria. I am issuing a temporary restraining order. You are not to approach Mrs. Fagundes's property or contact her directly for 30 days. If she wishes to communicate with you, it will be on her own terms. Michael finally looked up. In his eyes was something I had not seen before. Shame. True shame. As for the custody of the minor, the judge looked at Liam, who was still standing next to the witness box. I am ordering an evaluation of the family environment. A 9-year-old child should not be exposed to this level of manipulation and unethical behavior. Victoria became hysterical. You cannot take my son from me. This is absurd. I am not taking your son, ma'am. I am ensuring he is in a healthy environment. The evaluation will determine if that is the case. In the meantime, the child may stay with his grandmother if she is willing. Everyone looked at me. I looked at Liam. My grandson had tears in his eyes, but also hope. He had been so brave. So incredibly brave. Yes, I said in a firm voice. He can stay with me for as long as necessary. The judge nodded. Good. Court is adjourned. Mr. Fagundes, Mrs. Victoria, I strongly recommend you hire a good lawyer and that you reconsider your priorities in life. He banged the gavel one last time. It was all over. Liam ran to me. I hugged him with all the strength I had left. Thank you, my love. You were so brave. So brave. I had to, Grandma, he sobbed against my chest. I could not let them hurt you anymore. Margaret hugged us both. Patrick was smiling with satisfaction. We had won. Not just the case. We had won the truth. When I turned, I saw Michael. He was standing, motionless, looking at me. Victoria had already stormed out of the courtroom, but he had stayed. For the first time in months, he really looked at me. And in his eyes, I saw something that broke my heart. Regret. He took a step toward me, but Patrick stepped between us. The restraining order starts now, Mr. Fagundes. You cannot approach my client. Michael nodded, defeated. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but no sound came out. Finally, he lowered his head and walked out of the courtroom. Liam stayed with me that night, and the next, and the next. Victoria tried to call several times, but the judge had been clear. Until there was a full family evaluation, my grandson would stay in my care. The first few days were hard for him. He missed his parents, despite everything. It was natural, but he was also relieved. In my house, there was no yelling, no constant tension, no conversations about money and property and manipulation. Grandma, he asked me one night while we were having dinner, do you think Dad hates me for what I did? I put down my fork and looked him in the eye. No, my love, your dad does not hate you. I think your dad is very confused right now. I think he made terrible mistakes. But someday, when he can think clearly, he is going to understand that you did the right thing. Mom called me a traitor, he said in a small voice. That broke my heart. You are not a traitor, Liam. You defended the truth. You defended someone who could not defend herself. That makes you a hero, not a traitor. He smiled for the first time in days. Really? Really? The weeks passed slowly. The social worker came several times to evaluate my home, my ability to care for Liam, the environment I provided. Each time, she left satisfied. My house was clean, orderly, and full of love. Liam was happy. He was eating well, doing his homework, playing in the yard. Margaret came to visit often. Patrick also stopped by now and then to make sure everything was all right. The restraining order expires in 2 weeks, he informed me one day. After that, Michael might try to contact you. Are you prepared for that? I did not know. Part of me wanted to see my son, to hear him say he was sorry, that he had been blind and manipulated. Another part of me still hurt too much. I was not sure I could forgive something like that. I do not know, I admitted honestly. One afternoon, while Liam was doing his homework at the kitchen table, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and found a woman I did not know. She was wearing a professional suit and carrying a briefcase. "Mrs. Fagundes?" she asked in a professional tone. "Yes, can I help you?" "My name is Gilda. I am a real estate agent. I am here on behalf of your son, Michael. He asked me to come and make you an offer for your property." I could not believe what I was hearing. After everything that had happened, after the humiliation in court, after losing temporary custody of his son, Michael was still trying to get my house. "An offer?" I repeated, incredulous. Gilda nodded, oblivious to the whole situation. "Yes, Mr. Fagundes is willing to offer you $100,000 for the property. It is a very generous offer considering the state of the market. $100,000. Less than half of what the house was worth. Tell my son," I replied, with a calm I did not know I possessed, "that this house is not for sale. Not for $100,000. Not for $200,000. Not for any amount of money in the world." Gilda blinked, surprised. "Ma'am, $100,000 is a considerable sum. You could buy a comfortable apartment and have money left over to live peacefully." "This house is not for sale," I repeated firmly. "And I would appreciate it if you would leave my property right now." I closed the door without waiting for a reply. My hands were shaking with rage. After everything, after the humiliation, after the betrayal, after temporarily losing his son, Michael was still trying to take my house. He did not even have the decency to come in person anymore. He sent intermediaries as if I were just an obstacle to be removed. Liam appeared in the living room. "Who was that, Grandma?" "No one important, my love," I lied. I did not want to worry him anymore. That night, I called Patrick to tell him what happened. He sighed heavily. "Eleanor, technically he is not violating the restraining order because he did not approach you personally, but it is clear he has not learned a thing. What can I do? Nothing. For now, ignore him. The order is still in effect for 10 more days. After that, you will have to decide if you want to renew it or not. 10 days. 10 days of peace before everything got complicated again. But life has strange ways of surprising us. 3 days later, on a Saturday morning, I was in the yard watering my flowers when I saw a car park in front of my house. It was not Michael's car. It was a different one. Older. The door opened, and my son got out. He was alone. No Victoria. He walked slowly toward the fence, but stopped before entering the property. He knew he could not get any closer. "Mom," he said in a hoarse voice, "please, I need to talk to you." I put down the hose and walked closer, but I kept my distance. Liam was inside the house, watching TV. I did not want him to hear this conversation. "You should not be here," I said coldly. "There is a restraining order." "I know. I am not coming in. I just need you to listen to me. Please." There was something different about him. He looked gaunt, as if he had not slept in days. He had deep dark circles under his eyes and had lost weight. But above all, there was something in his eyes I had not seen in months. "Clarity. You have 5 minutes," I said, crossing my arms. Michael took a deep breath. "Mom, I do not even know where to begin. I ruined everything. I know that. I did unforgivable things. I tried to take your house. I betrayed you. I lied. I tampered with evidence. I paid a witness. And worst of all, I lost my son in the process." He paused. Tears were beginning to form in his eyes. "Victoria left me," he continued, 2 days ago. She said I was useless, that I had ruined the whole plan, that without the house, I was no good to her. She took her things and left. I do not know where she is. Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction, but I only felt sadness. Sadness for my son, who had allowed a woman to turn him into someone unrecognizable. "I know I do not deserve your forgiveness," Michael said, his voice breaking. "I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but I need you to know that I was blind. Victoria convinced me it was for the best, that you did not need such a big house, that it was our chance to get ahead, and I believed her because I wanted to believe her. And that justifies what you did to me?" I asked in a cold voice. "Does that justify trying to leave me on the street?" "No," he admitted, lowering his head. "Nothing justifies what I did. Nothing. I betrayed the woman who gave me life. The woman who worked day and night so I could have a future. The woman who was widowed and still carried on for me. There is no justification for that." The silence stretched between us. A heavy silence, loaded with pain and regret. "Your father would be so disappointed in you," I finally said. The words came out harsher than I intended, but they were true. Michael collapsed. He literally fell to his knees on the sidewalk, sobbing. "I know, Mom. I know. And the worst part is that Liam is disappointed in me too. My own son sees me as a villain. And he is right. I watched him cry. This 38-year-old man, crying like a child on the sidewalk. Part of me wanted to comfort him, as I had when he was little. But another part, the part that was still bleeding from the betrayal, held firm. "Do you know what hurts the most?" I said. "It is not that you tried to take the house. Material things come and go. What hurts the most is that you looked me in the eye in that courtroom and pretended you were doing it for my own good, that you used your supposed filial love as an excuse to rob me. That is what I cannot forgive." Michael looked up. His face was soaked in tears. "Will you ever be able to forgive me? I am not asking for it to be now, or tomorrow, or next year, but someday. Do you think you can?" I did not know what to answer. Forgiveness was not something I could promise at that moment. The wound was too deep, too recent. "I do not know, Michael," I said honestly. "Right now, I just know I need time. A lot of time." He nodded, accepting my answer. "And Liam? Can I see him?" "Liam is in my temporary custody until there is a full evaluation. If you want to see him, you will have to talk to the social worker and follow the proper legal channels. I will. I will do whatever it takes. He is my son. I love him." "Then show him with actions, not words," I said firmly. "Words do not mean anything coming from you anymore." Michael slowly got to his feet. "Mom, one last thing. About the offer I sent with the real estate agent. I do not want to hear it," I interrupted. "Please, just let me explain." I crossed my arms, waiting. "I did not make that offer. It was Victoria. She still had access to some of my accounts. She contacted the agent without me knowing. By the time I found out, it was too late. She had already come here. I swear on Dad's memory, I had nothing to do with it." I looked at him, trying to detect if he was lying, but in his eyes, I only saw truth and exhaustion, a deep exhaustion. "Go, Michael," I said finally. "Before I call the police for violating the order." He nodded. "Thank you for listening to me. I know I did not deserve it." He walked back to his car. Before getting in, he turned one last time. "I love you, Mom. I have always loved you, and I am going to spend the rest of my life trying to prove it." He left. I stood there, watching his car disappear down the street. The tears finally fell. Because despite everything, despite the pain and the betrayal, he was still my son. And a part of me, a small but persistent part, still loved him. Liam came out of the house. "Grandma, are you okay?" I saw Dad from the window. I hugged him tight. "I am fine, my love. Everything is going to be fine. But have you ever had to let go of someone you love because they hurt you too much? Have you had to choose between your love and your dignity? Tell me in the comments if you have been through something similar." The days continued on. The family evaluation proceeded. The social worker, a woman named Carmen, different from my friend Margaret, came several more times. Carmen, the social worker, was a meticulous woman. She checked every corner of my house, observed how I interacted with Liam, asked questions about routines, food, schoolwork. She constantly took notes in her briefcase. Mrs. Fagundes, she told me one Tuesday afternoon after her 5th visit, I have been evaluating the situation for 3 weeks. I have observed the environment you provide for your grandson. I have spoken with his teachers, with his friends, with neighbors, and I have to tell you something. My heart sped up. Were they going to take Liam from me? This child is thriving under your care, she continued with a soft smile. His grades have improved. His teacher says he is more participatory in class. He is eating better, sleeping better, and most importantly, he is emotionally stable. I breathed a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, Carmen went on. I have spoken with his father. Mr. Michael is going through a complicated divorce. He is currently living in a small, one-bedroom apartment. He works long hours. He does not have a stable structure to offer a 9-year-old child. What does that mean? I asked. It means I am going to recommend to the judge that the temporary custody of Liam be extended indefinitely. You will be his legal guardian until the father can demonstrate that he has an appropriate and stable environment. Of course, Mr. Michael will have supervised visitation rights. Tears began to roll down my cheeks. Really? Carmen nodded. Your grandson needs stability, and you are giving it to him. Besides, he was very brave to defend his grandmother in court. That boy loves you deeply. It would be cruel to separate you now. When Liam got home from school that afternoon, I gave him the news. He shouted with joy and hugged me so tight he nearly knocked me over. I really get to stay with you, Grandma, for as long as you need, my love. That night, we cooked his favorite meal together. I made lasagna, the same recipe my husband loved. While it was baking, Liam asked me something that took me by surprise. Grandma, do you think Dad will ever change? I sat down next to him at the kitchen table. I do not know, Liam. People can change, but they have to want to. Your dad made very big mistakes. It is going to take time for him to fix things. Do you miss him? He asked with curious eyes. I miss the son he used to be, I admitted. The man your dad was before Victoria came into his life. That man was good, he was honest. But that man got lost somewhere along the way. And what if he becomes that man again? Then maybe, someday, we can be a family again, but a different one, because things will never go back to the way they were. Liam processed my words in silence. Then he said something wise for a 9-year-old. My teacher says that when you break something valuable, you can glue it back together, but you will always see the cracks. She says that does not make it less valuable, just different. He was right. Our family had broken. And even if we could glue it back together someday, the cracks would always be there. The weeks turned into months. October passed. November arrived with its characteristic chill. Liam and I fell into a comfortable routine. He went to school. I worked on my sewing. In the afternoons, we did homework together. On weekends, we cooked, watched movies, worked in the garden. Michael had supervised visits every 2 Saturdays. A mediator was present for 2 hours while father and son spent time together in a neutral park. At first, the visits were tense. Liam did not know how to act around his father. But slowly, very slowly, they began to reconnect. Michael never tried to contact me directly. He respected my space. But through the mediator, he always sent messages that he was sorry, that he was in therapy, that he was trying to be a better person, that someday he hoped to earn my forgiveness. I did not respond to those messages. I was not ready yet. In December, something unexpected happened. I was decorating the Christmas tree with Liam when the doorbell rang. I opened the door and found a woman I did not know. She was young, maybe 35 years old, well-dressed but with a nervous expression. Mrs. Fagundes, she asked softly. Yes, can I help you? My name is Laura, she said. I am Victoria's sister. I tensed immediately. I looked at her, confused. I do not understand. May I come in? It will only be a few minutes. I need to talk to you about my sister. I hesitated, but something in her expression made me trust her. I let her in. Liam was in his room doing homework, so we sat in the living room. I do not know if Michael told you, the woman began, but my sister and I have not spoken in years. She was always ambitious, obsessed with money and status. That is why when I found out what she did to you and Michael, I was not surprised. but I felt obligated to come. Why? I asked. Because this is not the first time my sister has done something like this. I froze. What do you mean? Laura took a folder out of her bag. My sister was married before, 8 years ago, to a man named David. He had a widowed father who lived in a house worth nearly $300,000. My heart began to beat faster. My sister convinced David to sue his father to get the property. She used the same tactics. Faked concern. Said the father was too old to live alone. Fabricated evidence of neglect. Paid witnesses. I could not believe what I was hearing. And what happened? David's father killed himself, she said in a broken voice. He could not stand the betrayal from his own son. He left a note saying he would rather die than live knowing his own son had betrayed him like that. Tears began to fall down my cheeks. That could have been me. If I had not had Patrick, Margaret, Liam. If the pressure had been too much. David found out later what my sister had done, she continued. He divorced her immediately, but the damage was already done. His father was dead. David fell into a deep depression. He lost his job. The last I heard, he was living on the street. I was speechless. The magnitude of that woman's evil was incomprehensible. She had destroyed an entire family. She had caused the death of an innocent man. And she had tried to do the same to me. Why are you telling me this? I managed to ask, my voice trembling. Laura looked at me with eyes full of guilt. Because I should have done it sooner. When I found out my sister had gotten married again, I should have warned Michael. But we had not spoken in years. I did not know how to contact him. And honestly, I was afraid he would not believe me. She opened the folder and showed me documents. Newspaper articles about the suicide of David's father. Divorce papers. There was even a copy of the suicide note the man had left. The words were harrowing. I can no longer live knowing my son sold me out for money. I prefer to die with dignity than live with this shame. I closed my eyes. Those could have been my words. That could have been my end. My sister is a predator, the woman said in a firm voice. She looks for men with parents who have valuable properties. She marries them. She manipulates them, turns them into cruel versions of themselves. And when she gets what she wants, she disappears with the money. Why did she not go to jail? I asked, outraged. Because she is very smart. She never leaves direct evidence of her involvement. She always manipulates others to do the dirty work, like she did with Michael. Technically, he was the one who filed the lawsuit, who paid the witness, who fabricated the evidence. She was right. Victoria had orchestrated everything, but Michael had been the one to execute the plan. I came today, the woman continued, because I read about your case in the local paper. I saw my sister's name, and I knew I had to do something. I cannot let her ruin another family. She already destroyed one. She cannot destroy another. I thanked her for coming, for having the courage to expose her own sister. Before she left me the folder with all the documents. If you need this for anything legal, use it. I will testify if necessary. It is time for my sister to pay for what she has done. I could not sleep that night. I thought about David, Victoria's first husband. I thought about his father, who had preferred to die rather than live with the betrayal. I thought about Michael, who had almost become the same kind of monster. But I also thought about Liam, about how a 9-year-old boy had saved our family with his bravery. If he had not recorded those videos, if he had not had the courage to show them in court, I might be dead now, or living on the street, or in a nursing home, broken and abandoned. The next morning I called Patrick. I told him everything. He listened in silence and then said something that surprised me. Eleanor, I think you should talk to Michael. I think he needs to know this. Why? I asked. He made his own decisions. Yes, but he did it under extreme manipulation from a sociopath. Knowing the full story does not excuse what he did, but it might help him understand how he got to that point. And maybe, just maybe, it might help him forgive himself. I was not sure. Part of me thought Michael deserved to live with the guilt, but another part, the part that was still his mother, knew Patrick was right. 2 days later, using the social worker as an intermediary, I asked Michael to come to my house. The restraining order had expired weeks ago, but he had never tried to approach without permission. This would be the first time he had entered my property in months. He arrived on time, with an expression of nervousness and hope mixed together. Liam was at school, so we were alone. I invited him in. He stood in the living room, uncomfortable, as if he were a stranger in the house where he had grown up. "Sit down," I said, motioning to the sofa. He sat on the edge, his hands between his knees. "Mom, thank you for agreeing to see me. I did not think you would. There is something you need to know," I said, getting straight to the point. I told him everything. About Laura's visit, about David and his father, about the suicide, about that woman's pattern of behavior. With every word, Michael's face grew paler. When I finished, he had tears streaming down his cheeks. "My God," he whispered, "I almost killed you. Mom, I almost did the same thing to you that they did to that man." "But you did not," I said firmly. "And the difference is that I had Liam. I had Patrick. I had Margaret. I had people who defended me." Michael covered his face with his hands. "I was so stupid, so blind. She told me exactly what I wanted to hear, that we deserved more, that it was my turn to have a good life, that you had lived enough. And I believed her because I wanted to believe I was not being a monster. You were manipulated," I admitted. "But that does not absolve you of responsibility. You chose to believe her. You chose to betray me. No one forced you to sign those papers." He nodded. "I know, and I am going to live with that guilt for the rest of my life. I have been in therapy 3 times a week. My therapist says I have to learn to forgive myself. But I do not know how to do that when even you have not forgiven me." We were silent for a long moment. I looked at my son, this adult man who was once my baby. This child I had nursed, comforted through nightmares, healed scraped knees, taken to his first day of school. Where had that boy gone? "I do not know if I can forgive you completely," I said honestly. "Not yet. The wound is too deep. You betrayed me in the most painful way possible. You used my love as a mother against me." Michael began to sob. "I am so sorry, Mom. I would give anything to go back in time, to have never met Victoria, to have defended you instead of attacking you." I got up and walked to the window. I could see the garden my husband and I had planted together so many years ago, the rose bushes he cared for so lovingly, the swing he had built for Michael when he was a boy. Now Liam played on that same swing. "Your father made me promise something before he died," I said, without turning around. "He made me promise to protect this house, that I would never sell it, that I would keep it as our family's home." I heard Michael's ragged breath. "And I kept that promise," I continued. "Despite everything, despite you, this house is still our family's home. And it always will be." I turned to look at him. "But the family your father imagined no longer exists. That family died the day you handed me those eviction papers. What we have now is something different, something broken, and I do not know if it can be repaired." Michael stood up. "Let me try, Mom. Please. I know it will take years, maybe decades. But let me try to earn your trust again. Let me show you that I can be the son you deserve." I looked him in the eyes. There was sincerity there, real regret, but I also knew that words were easy. Actions were what counted. "If you really want my forgiveness," I said slowly, "then show me, not with words, with actions. Be a good father to Liam. Be honest. Work on yourself. Become the man your father wanted you to be." "I will," he promised. "I swear on Dad's memory. And there is one more thing," I added. "I want you to go find David." Michael looked at me, confused. "Victoria's first husband?" "Yes. Find him. Help him. You were lucky that I survived and that Liam saved you. He did not have that luck. His father died. His life was destroyed, and all because of the same woman who almost destroyed ours." "You want me to help him?" Michael asked, incredulous. "I want you to understand the full consequences of what you almost did. I want you to see in David what you could have become. And I want you to use your second chance to give him one, too." Michael nodded slowly. "I will." Michael kept his word. Over the next few weeks, he investigated David's whereabouts. He found him living in a homeless shelter in the next town over. The man who had once been a successful executive now slept on a shared cot, ate at soup kitchens, and spent his days looking for odd jobs that no one would give him. Michael went to see him. He told me later that David did not want to talk to him at first. He thought it was another one of Victoria's tricks. But when Michael showed him the court documents from my case, when he told him his own story, David cried. Not from sadness, but from relief. Relief to know he was not alone, that someone else had survived the same nightmare. My son did something I never expected. He offered David a job at his accounting firm. It was a small position, an assistant, but it was a start. He also helped him find a modest apartment. He paid the deposit and the first month's rent out of his own pocket. It is not enough, Michael told me when he came to tell me. It will never be enough to make up for what he lost. But it is a start. I looked at him with new eyes. This act of kindness toward a complete stranger showed me something that words could not. It showed me that maybe, just maybe, my son was really changing. The months passed. December turned into January, then February. Liam was still living with me. The visits with Michael became more frequent and less supervised. Father and son began to rebuild their relationship, brick by brick, conversation by conversation. One afternoon in March, Michael arrived with a large box. "Mom, I found this in my apartment storage unit. I thought maybe you would want them back." I opened the box, and my heart stopped. Inside were the family photos that had been in his house. Photos from his childhood, his graduation, his father. Photos that Victoria had made him take down because they made the place look outdated. "I never should have taken them down," Michael said softly. "I never should have let her make me forget where I came from." I picked up one photo in particular. It was of my husband holding Michael when he was 5 years old. Both of them were smiling at the camera with pure, innocent happiness. Simpler times, happier times. "Your father would be proud that you are trying to do the right thing," I said, handing him the photo. Michael looked at it with tears in his eyes. "I do not know if he would be proud, but I hope he would forgive me, like I hope you will forgive me someday." And right there, in that moment, something shifted inside me. It was not complete forgiveness, not yet, but it was the beginning of something. It was the first crack in the wall I had built around my heart. "I am trying to forgive you," I admitted. Every day, I try a little more. Those simple words made my son break down. He hugged me for the first time in almost a year, and I let him. I hugged him back. This son of mine, who had been so lost and was now finding his way back. 2 years later, I am sitting in my yard watching Liam play on the swing his grandfather built. He is 11 years old now. He is tall, smart, and compassionate. He still lives with me most of the time, though he spends weekends with Michael. My son never remarried. He says he needs time to work on himself before even thinking about another relationship. He is still in therapy. He still visits me every week. And slowly, very slowly, we have rebuilt something that resembles a mother-son relationship. It is not what it was before. It never will be. The cracks are still there, visible and permanent. But as Liam's teacher said 2 years ago, that does not make it less valuable, just different. David also comes to visit me from time to time. He has become an unexpected friend. Someone who understands the pain of being betrayed by family, someone who understands how hard it is to forgive. He now works full-time at Michael's firm. He bought a used car. He rents a small but dignified apartment. He is rebuilding his life, step by step. "Your son saved me," he told me once. "I do not know where I would be without his help." "You helped him too," I replied. "You gave him a purpose, a way to redeem himself." As for Victoria, we never heard from her again. She disappeared just as she had appeared, probably looking for her next victim. Her sister, Laura, tried to press charges based on David's case, but there was not enough evidence. Victoria was too smart to leave direct traces. Sometimes I wonder how many more families she has destroyed, how many sons she has manipulated into betraying their parents, how many homes she has turned into battlegrounds. But then I remember that I survived. My family survived. And that has to be enough. This house, the house my husband and I built with so much sacrifice, is still mine. The walls still hold our memories. The garden still blooms every spring. The swing still creaks gently in the wind. And I am still here, protecting what is mine, keeping the promise I made to my husband. Margaret, my loyal friend, comes for coffee every week. Patrick, the lawyer who defended me for free, has become part of the family. Liam calls him Uncle Patrick. Susan, the neighbor who lied in court, moved away shortly after. She could not live with the shame. Someone else lives in that house now. Good people who greet me over the fence. I have learned many things in these 2 years. I have learned that family love is not unbreakable, that blood is not always thicker than ambition, that the people you love can betray you in ways you never imagined. But I have also learned that forgiveness is possible even if it takes years, that broken families can heal even if they never go back to what they were, and that sometimes protecting what is yours is not selfishness, it is survival. Have I completely forgiven Michael? I do not know. Some days, I feel like I have. Other days, when I am alone at night, the wound aches again as if it were new, but I am trying, and I think that counts for something. What I do know is this: I am never leaving this house. Not for money, not for comfort, not for anything. This house is more than walls and a roof. It is my husband's legacy. It is the proof of our sacrifice. It is the reminder that I survived the worst betrayal possible and came out the other side, stronger. Sometimes people ask me if it was worth the fight, if it would not have been easier to just take the money and move, and my answer is always the same. Some battles are not fought because they are easy. They are fought because they are necessary, because defending your dignity is always worth it, because teaching your grandson to stand up for the truth, no matter the cost, is one of the most important lessons you can give. Liam learned that at 9 years old. He learned that sometimes you have to be brave, even when you are scared. That standing up for what is right can cost you relationships. That the truth is more important than blind loyalty. And I hope he carries those lessons with him for the rest of his life. As for me, I have learned that forgiveness is not weakness, that you can forgive someone without forgetting what they did, that you can love someone and still maintain healthy boundaries, that sometimes family is redefined, and that is okay. I am 67 years old now. My hair is whiter, my hands have more wrinkles, but I am still here, in my house, in my garden, living the life my husband and I dreamed of. And every morning, when I wake up in the room where he died, I tell him the same thing. I kept my promise, my love. I protected our home. I protected our family. And I believe that wherever he is proud. Sometimes protecting the past is the only way to save the future. Sometimes defending what is yours is the only way to love yourself. And sometimes the keys to an old house represent something more than property. They represent dignity, sacrifice, and the refusal to be erased from your own story. This is my house. This is my home. And here I will stay until my last breath. Have you had to let go of someone you loved to save yourself? Have you had to choose between love and your dignity? Have you had to defend something that was yours against the very people who were supposed to protect you? Tell me your story in the comments. Because we all deserve to be heard. We all deserve to know we are not alone. And we all deserve an ending where justice, however imperfect, finally arrives.